Geometry Dash is infamous for its difficulty and levels. From your chill and relaxing 2 stars to one of the hardest levels the Demoness has to offer, difficulty in Geometry Dash is what separates levels from each other. But how has difficulty changed over time in Geometry Dash? And why are we here today? Well, let's take a trip all the way to the beginning of Geometry Dash. When Geometry Dash 1.0 was released, it was just a simple mobile platformer with a total of 7 levels. These levels span from Stereo Madness, an easy level, all the way to Jumper, an insane level, which was the hardest difficulty levels were at the time. However, some players missed this little button to the right that let you create your own levels. With not being able to create much and the game being so new, the hardest levels weren't so hard compared to what they are today. In Update 1.1, a new level was added called Time Machine, which was definitely the hardest main level at the time. It also introduced the Mirror Portal, which at the time was used for some interesting gameplay quirks. However, a player by the name of the Real Darnock created a level called Mind the Gap. This level may not seem very important, but for a short period of time, this was the hardest level in all of Geometry Dash, and this would be the beginning of the top 1 spot being stolen. Later, when Update 1.2 rolled around, a new level was added by the name of Cycles. This level also included a new game mode, which was the Ball. This game mode would change gravity when you click on a solid block. This had a whole ton of new gameplay options that could be used for all difficulties. However, the most notable event to happen in this update was the release of Demon Park by M2 Cole, which was another hardest level in the game. When RobTop saw this level, he got an idea in his head. This idea came out when he released Update 1.3 shortly after. A new difficulty had been added with the release of the Demon difficulty, which would grant 10 stars. Demons were the hardest levels in the game and thus would be extremely intimidating. Those who were able to conquer these beasts would become some of the best players in the game at the time. Shortly after Demon Park, 3 famous levels by the name of To the Grave, The Nightmare, and The Lightning Road would be created, To the Grave of which being the hardest at the time. That was short-lived, however, when the Demon Extreme Park was released. This level would create a new type of gameplay with memorizing where you have to go. This would be the early beginnings of what we see today inside levels that involve memory today. With the introduction of demons, creators tried to push the limits of what could be possible in Geometry Dash. However, some did not follow the rules and used methods to avoid having to verify levels of this difficulty. The first example of this was the level BP Night. This level at the time was miles ahead in difficulty compared to Extreme Park. The level earned a rating, but ended up losing it due to a secret way being found. One of a few ways to upload extremely difficult levels to the servers. This leads us into Heaven and Hell. This was one of the first levels to be considered impossible, with ridiculous timings and orb spam that is still extremely difficult. Despite this level being incredibly difficult even for today's standards, it still was rated. But that was until a secret way was found and it was unrated. This would start creating suspicion on levels that were extremely difficult, and would shape the future for extremely difficult levels. After these levels, not much would happen until Update 1.4 would release and introduce the level Clutterfunk. This level introduced a new portal that would make your cube smaller upon entering it. This resulted in being able to create some very tight spaces that could still be possible. Later on, the Hell series by Zone0924 was created. This series included levels such as the Hell Zone, the Hell World, the Hell Dignity, and the Hell Origin. Some were made in 1.4 and others in the new Update 1.5. Update 1.5 brought a new level by the name of Theory of Everything. This level introduced the UFO game mode, which was just like Flappy Bird, where you can jump in the air. This brought more gameplay techniques to the community and thus influenced difficulty. Coming back to the Hell levels, they were unrated due to Zone being exposed for exploiting a bug. You see, these levels looked outdated compared to levels made in 1.4 and 1.5. The reason for this is because Zone used a 1.2 level editor instead of the newest version, allowing him to verify his levels in practice mode, but was patched in later updates. Moving on to a new level that is extremely difficult and would place on the main list even today is Stereo Demoness. This level was made by Majako. Had some pretty cool art and structures, but that's not what we're here for today. This level contains some very precise timings, tight ship corridors, high CPS UFO spam, and more. This would remain rated until Majako was exposed for hacking Stereo Demoness half a year later. It should be mentioned that levels of this difficulty were heavily disliked by the community, as at the time, hard levels were looked down upon. The Hell levels in Stereo Demoness really increased what was thought to be possible in this game. and also made the community more skeptical of levels that were way too hard for the current time. And when update 1.6 rolled around, it introduced 2 new levels. The first of which being Electroman Adventures, which isn't really a notable level. But the other level is extremely important towards the Geometry Dash community. The level I'm talking about is none other than the infamous Clubstep. This level was the first ever demon level created by RobTop. Now with today's standards, this is extremely easy compared to what we have today. But at the time, this was thought to be one of the hardest levels to grace the game and push the skills of players. But this level is also important for another thing, its influence on other levels. One influence being on a level released shortly after by the name of Silent Club. This level was even miles ahead of Scary Demoness and places even at spot number 32 on the list today. This level included ridiculous Orsam, just like in Heaven and Hell, stupidly tight ship sections, and the most awful timings imaginable. This of course instantly took the top 1 spot when rated, but the community was still suspicious, and they were right. But this level used a very special trick to avoid suspicion. Instead of using a secret way or exploiting old versions, this level used a bug involving practice mode. You see, there was a bug where if you clicked a blue orb on the same frame of entering practice mode, you would have that gravity effect at the beginning of the level. Silent Club utilized this by making you go through a ship above the entire level, thus letting you get to the end without going through any of the gameplay. However, Silent Club isn't only known for that, but also its influence of future levels by starting the silent level trend. This trend would include levels that were impossible, and we'll get to those in a bit. We should now talk about a mysterious level that was wiped off the servers and one of the few levels that were almost lost for good. The level in question is Element 111RG, part of the Element series started by GW Arco. However, this level was way harder than the rest. In fact, the level was so difficult, it would be around the difficulty of Tartarus. But this level's life was short-lived after a secret way was discovered. Surprising, I know. It would not only get unrated from the servers, but also removed from the servers entirely, resulting in it not being able to be recovered. Except Stormfly has been able to recover the level and is working on it, and we'll see where it goes from there. After all these impossible levels that were so hard for even today's standards, the hardest demons started to become levels that are entry extremes today, resulting in a change in course for difficulty in Geometry Dash. The first of these levels was Ice Carbon Diablo X, one of the installments in the Ice Carbon series. And this level at the time was thought to be the hardest level when Stereo Demoness was nerfed. It is well known for its brutal ship parts, making it an extremely hard achievement on mobile and lower hertz monitors. However, this was also hacked, but that didn't stop players from trying to complete this challenge. A few updates would roll around before this beast was slain. The first of these updates were 1.7, which introduced the level Electrodynamics and most importantly, Speed Portals. Speed Portals would change how fast or slow your icon would travel across a level. It brought the intensity of levels to a new high and created levels that would be pretty learny. The next of these updates was 1.8, bringing the level of Hexagon Force into new gameplay elements. The first of these being the dual game mode, which can create some of the most interesting gameplay out there. There can be symmetrical duels, but it gets really complex with asymmetrical duels. These duels can be extremely learny and hard, resulting in the player having to pay close attention to the parts. The next gameplay element introduced were slopes. These could be used for different types of momentum. I will admit though, these slopes were and still are pretty buggy and inconsistent to this day. But now, let's move on to the next update that revolutionized difficulty in Geometry Dash. Update 1.9 introduced blast processing, just a simple level with upgrade designs. But this also introduced one of the most important game modes ever in Geometry Dash. I am of course talking about the wave game mode. This was so important to difficulty in Geometry Dash, as there is another skill-based game mode finally introduced alongside the ship. Some of the top levels we see today wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this. Another thing introduced in 1.9 is the ability to use custom songs in Geometry Dash. Gone are the days where you only had 16 songs to choose from. Now you have thousands of songs and Newgrounds to choose from. The reason this is so important for difficulty in Geometry Dash is that it enabled new types of music sync, resulting in the hard levels we see to this very day. You could use a slow song for levels that you want to have precise timings, or a fast song for levels you want to have intense and fast-paced gameplay. It also introduced 3D blocks, which might not seem to affect the difficulty in levels, but actually was a first step to create memorization in Geometry Dash levels, as you could create fake outlines a player could go through. However, these three things are not the only things that revolutionized the difficulty in the game as well. The most groundbreaking feature was that the game was now available on Steam. This allowed for players to play on higher hertz and have more precise clicks. On a mobile device, you would have to use your thumb, and it would be extremely hard to control while also gripping your entire phone. With a computer, however, you would only have to grip your mouse, up arrow key, or spacebar if you're a madman. This would result in harder levels to be verified legitimately. The first case of this would be with Ice Carbon Diablo X, when Riot would verify it, as he was an extremely skilled ship player. This would be the early beginnings of what we see today as skill sets. Skill sets can shape how a player views a level from level. For example, if a player is very good at Wave but horrible at ship, they would most likely find a level like Prismatic Haze easier than Bloodbath. However, these are not the only skill sets in the game, and we'll move on to those a bit later. But going back to Riot's completion, it would prove that it was possible to complete such a hard level. After ICDX, there was a level that was in the top for a very short period of time. This level is Extreme Demoness by Majako, the same person who created Stereo Demoness. This level was one of the first top demons to utilize the Wave game mode. At the time, the Wave was very hard for the community, making this the hardest level in the game until it was nerfed. You see, players back then thought the Wave game mode was impossible, as they haven't used anything like it before. Even levels like Decode and 9 Circles were thought to be some of the hardest stuff the game has ever seen due to the hard wave sections. This leads us into one of the most historical levels to ever grace the game. The level I'm talking about is none other than Cataclysm. The creator of this level, G-Boy, supposedly verified this extreme challenge after over 80,000 attempts. Because of G-Boy's reputation and the trust with the community, Cataclysm was rated. For quite a while, no one was able to complete this level. Some people claimed to have beaten this level, but there was no proof of a legitimate completion. However, a few months later, the level had several victors. The first of them being Cyclic, proving to the community that this level was actually possible. This pushed difficulty to its absolute limits in the game at the time, and would kickstart the evolving player base. However, Cyclic would confess to hacking later on, supposedly giving the title First Victor to another player who beat shortly after Cyclic. This player is Giron, who beat the level legitimately, showing that it's still possible despite Cyclic's hacking. There was also Riot and Sandstorm who beat it very close to each other, which Riot would go on and make history with the next level we'll talk about. Riot would start one of the most famous and revolutionary levels in the game. I am of course talking about Bloodbath. Bloodbath was a mega collab involving 11 creators, one of which being Riot himself. With the skill set Riot had acquired, this level involved a lot of ship gameplay. He would stream himself attempting this beast live on his Twitch channel, and after a fail at 94%, he would finally complete it. The level would be rated immediately due to a live verification of the level. This would kickstart the community's need for verification videos to prove that level has actually been verified before it was rated. After Bloodbath, it would kickstart the community's competition and push the limits of what could be possible in Geometry Dash. The level would remain at the top 1 spot for a very long time. At the time, the community thought that no one would be able to dethrone such a level. This would especially be proven with how long the level would take to get its first victor. Over half a year after Bloodbath's completion, it finally saw its first victor, with Cuizo being it after 28,000 attempts. What could actually dethrone such a level? About 2 weeks after Bloodbath's completion, Update 2.0 would be released. While not as revolutionary as Update 1.9, it introduced a robot game mode, moving objects, and alpha triggers. The robot was just like the cube, except the longer you hold, the higher it jumps, making some pretty unique gameplay. The moving objects could create some interesting gameplay as well, except it may have not been used wisely at the beginning of the update. Then alpha triggers really kickstarted memory in Geometry Dash, as you could use it to hide gameplay and have the player remember where to click. But let's move on to Bloodbath's dethroning. The first level to attempt to do so was a level by the name of Phobos that came out of nowhere and was supposedly verified. This made it get rated and was actually harder than Bloodbath. But only a few days later, Phobos was deleted. This made Phobos the hardest level in the game for a short period of time. However, this proved to the community that Bloodbath could actually be in danger. The community's worry was true, with the famous figure Nubis creating Sakupin Hell. This level was absolute hell to play and was so hard at the time, and is still pretty difficult to this day. The level pushed the wave game mode to its absolute limits, with precise wave timings and tight spaces. Noobus hack verified the level, but was actually honest about it. However, this would lead to it being deleted from the servers, and Bloodbath seemed to be safe again. But that was very wrong, as a rising player by the name of Trusta wanted to give the level a go. From Trusta's intense grind that he started, he would finally beat this beast of a level after 22,000 attempts and dying to the last wave 7 times. Due to Trusta recording his completion, it was proven to be verified legitimately and was then rated. This would finally dethrone Bloodbath from the #1 position after being there for over half a year. This spawned a new era in difficulty in Geometry Dash, and it must have been an amazing time to be in the community. We should quickly mention Thanatos as it was top 1, despite it being there for a short period of time. Even though this level was hacked, it still was rated for some reason, giving it the top spot for a small period of time, but that wouldn't be for long. The reign of Thanatos would end quickly with a level that had been in the works for a long time. Sonic Wave was a level created by Cyclic to rival Bloodbath. Cyclic made a completion video of Sonic Wave, and it seemed to him that it was a way to secure the legitimacy of Sonic Wave. However, this level was at another level of difficulty compared to Bloodbath, as today Sonic Wave is on the main list while Bloodbath isn't even in the top 200, and it made Cyclic suspicious. And this would be proven further with his recording being found to be cut, meaning that he faked the completion of Sonic Wave. This would get Sonic Wave unrated, giving Bloodbath the top 1 spot again at the time, and it would also get deleted. However, this wasn't the end for Sonic Wave. Cyclic decided to revamp Sonic Wave and supposedly verified it. However, this was extremely suspicious due to him verifying it on 60 Hz. And this suspicion was correct, resulting in Cyclic confessing to hacking. But some people wanted to keep Sonic Wave with the community. This then led to the race to verify Sonic Wave. After a lot of verifiers and demotivating fails, the verifier ended up being Sunix, kickstarting his career. And due to this being legit with live streams, it was rated and became the new #1 demon. This level pushed the limits of what was possible with the wave game mode, bringing new ideas of what could be done with this game mode. But this was just another step towards increasing the difficulty of this game. Next up is a level that you definitely would expect to be mentioned. Even though Yadigrasso isn't considered harder than Sonic Wave right now, it was when it was verified. Yadigrasso was meant to break the difficulty barrier in this game, as when it was unnerfed, it would place way higher than it is right now. But this level ended up getting nerfed to get out quicker. Not only did this level hold very hard gameplay with precise timings, tight ships, and extremely difficult wave sections, but it was all over 3 minutes of gameplay, adding in the element of nerve control. The one who could take up such a challenge is once again Trusta. After grinding the level out for such a long time and tons of determination, he would verify it. Yadigrasso at the time was considered harder than Sonic Wave, but would eventually be moved down. Yadigrasso pushed the limits of what could be conceived inside just a single level, as it pushed the skill ceiling to new heights with a different type of skill set, the ability to control your nerves. The next level to push the difficulty of this game is the final installment in a series called the RGB, including Sonic Wave and Yadigrasso. This level I'm talking about is of course Erebus. The level was some of the hardest gameplay the community had seen at the time, and at the time, it was considered harder than Yadigrasso. This meant it would also take the #1 spot after being verified by Bloodstep, increasing the difficulty of this game once again. Though this got moved, it still was revolutionary. After Erebus, the game entered the update it is in today, Update 2.1. This update introduced the Spider game mode, which isn't really that groundbreaking. All it did was the same as the ball, except teleport instantly instead of moving across the screen. However, something interesting introduced was the new demon difficulties. Before 2.1, demons were all the same difficulty, meaning levels like the Nightmare and Demon Park were the same difficulty as stuff like Sonic Wave and Bloodbath. But, these new demon difficulties would separate these levels with 5 rankings that could be decided by the community. This meant over time, the difficulty could change, as an example with Ice Carbon Diablo X. It really helped with guiding players on what to beat, but this update led to a new top 1. Plasma Pulse Finale is the final level in the Plasma Pulse series. This level contains some of the hardest timings to ever be seen. Timings is a skill set that hasn't been brought to focus on the top 1 for a while, but Plasma Pulse Finale was the one to do so. It was both created and verified by Smokes. This became the first ever top 1 in 2.1, bringing the skill ceiling to a new high. Although there were some other top 1s, they aren't considered harder than Erebus, as Plasma Pulse Finale is the level that dethroned RGB to today's standards. But there was a level in the works that would end Plasma Pulse Finale's 4-month reign. The level that was in the works is none other than Bloodlust. Bloodlust was started all the way back when Bloodbath was verified. It was a project that not only super buffed Bloodbath, but also added an entire extension. This started a bit of a trend in Geometry Dash by buffing a level and extending it, using levels such as Carries, Fragile, and Ultra Sands. But Bloodlust wouldn't be verified anytime soon during the time of Bloodbath, as it would go through multiple verifiers. The level pushed the ship to its absolute limits, higher than Bloodbath even. And it also held the element of nerf control, being one of the longest top 1s in the game. However, one verifier pulled through. This player is of course Novelboy, and he was determined. But this started one of the longest verifications to ever be seen in Geometry Dash. Novelboy was verifying this level for several months now, and got a devastating fail of 98%, which severely demotivated him. But he would pull through with his determination 8 months later, and he had verified the top 1 demon after over 120,000 attempts in 1.5 years of verifying. This raised the difficulty to the highest community thought it would be, even I thought at the time. No one thought Bloodlust could ever be dethroned, and they would be right, for a year. While technically never being a top 1, Crimson Planet was technically the level to dethrone Bloodlust after it being top 1 for a year now. However, the creators focused more on difficulty rather than enjoyability, making this a trend for levels that come up in the future. From this focus, the level had ridiculous choke points such as the waves, making it so much harder than it should be. The reason this actually wasn't top 1 is because this wouldn't get rated until 4 months later. We'll get to the level that actually dethroned Bloodlust next. The level to actually dethrone Bloodlust was none other than Zodiac. Zodiac was a nice break from the past few top 1s we have had. This one was different than most, as it wasn't health themed and used a different skill set, this one being nerf control. Zodiac was a mega collab that hosted originally by Rico LP. However, he then quit Geometry Dash, which gave the level to Bionox. There are a few verifiers in mind, such as Wuxi and N level, but it was actually given to Benji8080. But sadly, Benji decided to drop it with his best being only 38% due to school and being demotivated with the game. But then Diamond Splash was handed the verification and got 42% fairly quickly, but he still ended up dropping it and handed it to Xander, which is where the story gets interesting. But supposedly out of nowhere, after over 61,000 attempts, Xander had verified Zodiac. It would then be given a rate and became the level to dethrone Bloodlust, but 5 months later, Xander confessed he hack verified the level after some suspicion. You see, Xander beat Zodiac very quickly. Maybe too quickly. He didn't post any progress videos, making it seem like it was a bit too lucky. And that was right. But Zodiac wouldn't be unrated due to Technical being the first victor 2 months prior to Zodiac's quote-unquote verification. From this whole situation, it really started the era where you need to have clicks in your video to prove that you are legit. In Xander's verification, there were no audible clicks, making it more suspicious. Almost every single record and pointer rate since then has audible clicks. Let's flash forward about a year now. Zodiac has been at a top spot for quite some time now, but there currently has been a verification race in the works right now for a potential dethroning of Zodiac. I am of course speaking of Tartarus. This began as a project called Silent Akbar, which was actually started by Riot. This level was a throwback to the 1.9 era, as it was made completely in 1.9. But with the new knowledge that creators have acquired over the years, they were able to make some stunning visuals, but also incredibly difficult gameplay that was still bearable. Riot set this as an open verification, spawning a race within the community to see who could verify it first. However, the 2 players to come on top in this race were Dolphy and Molzy, the latter of which has been grinding the level for several months now. Though progressing slowly, he was one of the first people at the time who could progress extremely far. But Dolphy decided to show up a bit later, and at the time Molzy had 97%. The race was very intense and probably pretty stressful for Molzy. But Dolphy ended up being the level before Molzy, but the list team was suspicious. This meant Tartarus still wouldn't get rated, as it wasn't proven legitimate. About a month later, Molzy would pull through and at the time be the verifier of Tartarus. This verification was sure legit, and would get Tartarus rated and put at the top 1 spot. But this isn't the end. After many tests with Dolphy, the list team determined he was legit, and Molesey gave the Dolphy the rated version of Tartarus. This made Molesey the first victor and Dolphy the verifier. For a few months now, Tartarus was unstoppable, but that supposedly came to an end when a newly verified level was released. This was of course the Golden. For some time, the Golden was thought to be harder than Tartarus due to the lack of opinions. It had some of the most precise timings ever seen in an raid level with the most brutal wave parts, and it seemed like the Golden was now the top one to never be dethroned. However, this turned into a very similar situation with Plasma Pulse Finale and Bloodlust. Once the list gathered some more opinions, they determined that Tartarus is still harder than the Golden. Once again, Tartarus seemed to be the level that couldn't be dethroned. We should quickly mention a sad moment for the community at the time. This was almost a year after the verification of Tartarus. I'm of course talking about when Bloodbath was pushed off to the legacy list after Alphabot X was placed. This was a very saddening moment for the community, as Bloodbath was a level to revolutionize the game entirely, and it was thought to be the level to never be dethroned. But seeing it go off really saddened the community, as it had been in the top 150 for over 5 years now. But this sparked a new era in Geometry Dash as we moved on from Bloodbath, and has really influenced the difficulty of the list today. Let's flash forward a bit into the future, as not much happens within the top spot for a very long time. Over a year and a half after the verification of Tartarus, Tartarus is still the number 1 demon. However, a new foe has appeared by the name of Arcturus. No, not that one. Yes, that's the one. Arcturus used to be an extremely hard level, and it would for sure be very close to the top 1 today. However, this level was nerfed, as Max FS thought the decoration was too good for a top 1. This resulted in a level that was actually possible, but still a difficult challenge. It would eventually get verified by Ultra COD HD, and Tartarus seemed to finally be close to its final days in the top 1. However, a month goes by and Arcturus still isn't rated. But there is another threat that comes along, this being Slaughterhouse. Seriously, not that one! Yes, this one, by Ice Cave. This is a complete overhaul of an old impossible level, but this was made to actually be humanly possible. At first this was set to be verified by Doggy, but he eventually focused on other projects. From this, the verification was passed to Space UK. Space would make extremely quick work of this beast, getting to the second wave in 6 days. Then he would get 92% a day later, and he pulled the unimaginable by beating it the next day. This not would only dethrone Tartarus if rated, but this was also one of the quickest verifications for a top 1, being quicker than stuff like Bloodbath, despite being way more difficult by a landslide. But shortly after this, another level to dethrone Tartarus was verified, which of course was Firework. Okay, this is getting ridiculous. Can we actually get to the right? Thank you. Firework has been in the works for over 2 years now, and the verification was extremely slow, but coincidentally it was verified just a few days after Slaughterhouse, bringing Tartarus from the level that would never be dethroned to the level on its last hours. But the ending of Tartarus in the top 1 came with a bang, with Arcturus, Slaughterhouse, and Firework all rated at the same time. This pushed Tartarus from its number 1 spot straight to the number 3 spot, as Arcturus was found to be easier than Tartarus by its victors. But Slaughterhouse was now the new number 1 demon with Firework below it. Surprisingly, Firework became a very popular level to progress on. A lot of people were getting runs and trying to progress on it. This whole situation took Geometry Dash straight out of its boring era, as the top levels have been static for such a long time. But also would be the beginning of making top 1s just to make top 1s. Despite Slaughterhouse's sheer difficulty, a new level by the name of Soucoup in Circles was verified out of nowhere by Diamond GMD. At some of the worst balancing ever, with a beginning that would be seen in an easy to mid-extreme all the way to a literal challenge at the start of the wave. This would remain until the end of the level, and the level ended up being placed above Slaughterhouse for some time, but eventually got moved down and caused outrage in the community. From the outrage of Soucoup in Circles, not much would happen until a few months later. This would be with the ultimate extreme demon, Abyss of Darkness. This level has been attempted by so many people across the years, but no one has been able to beat it. The closest someone has come to beat it was Dill's Thick with his 2 fails at 98%, understandably demotivating him causing him to drop the verification. Nothing much would be seen with Abyss of Darkness until almost a year later with Cursed. Cursed was a rising player, and he was making insanely quick progress for a level of this difficulty. After failing twice at 95%, he was able to do this once impossible level and verify the current #1 demon today. But this wouldn't get rated until a few weeks later. It would then take some more time to be placed on the list. It did eventually get placed at the top 1 spot, but it could possibly be moved down now. But please do not leave comments saying, "Oh, but Slaughterhouse is hard now." If that happens, it gets pretty annoying. So that's where we are today. From the beginnings of where demons didn't exist, all the way to where the top levels are completely unreachable. We currently have a few levels in the works as well, with Silent Clubstep and Acheron, which is exciting. Despite what some may think, this is one of the best times to be in the GD community, as the game hasn't been as eventful as right now. But this game may have gone too hard, as almost everyone can't keep up with the exponential rate the difficulty in this game has seen. But despite that, you can still have fun with this game and maybe attempt these levels. Who knows what the top ones in the future would look like? Will there be anything harder, or is this another stale point in the game again? Who knows? But maybe we'll see something like a Rochi get verified, which would be a huge turning point in the community. But thank you all for watching this video to the end. This has taken me such a long time to put together, and I hope it has entertained at least one of you. Y'all have an amazing day, and I'll see you guys with my next upload.